So if you've been following the Wheat Stocks Reddit, you might have noticed that there has been a lot more news coming out about the different companies. And you've also might have noticed that the news that are coming out, even though those news are good, they're not driving up the prices of these stocks as much as you would perhaps expect them to or like them to. So for example, we had the Evergreen company, which received their production license, and the Kronos Group, which owns about a third of this company, they went up by 6%, but then the next day they dropped pretty much back down to where they were. So a lot of people might have expected it to go up more, but it didn't. And there's several reasons why this is happening, and if you need to be able to understand those reasons if you plan to be successful in this market. So one of the primary reasons is because there's not that many people getting into this market anymore. Everybody who wanted to get into this market has pretty much already done so. And you still getting new people invested into this market, but the majority of them who wanted to get into this did so after the elections when these stocks were taken off. A lot of new people joined back then, and they drove up the prices of these stocks. And now we're still getting new people, but it's not nearly as much as before. Also, in addition to that, all of the smaller companies, well, all of the starting companies, the very few companies that started out really early, they have actually grown a significant portion now. And pretty much well, there's a lot more companies nowadays, but also every single company is valued at a lot more than it should be, or a lot more than it is currently capable of producing. So a lot of these companies are worth significantly more than they probably should be because people are pricing in their future expectations, which is fine. That is okay. But you have to understand that with that comes, with the expectations being priced in, whenever you get good news about a company, well, it's not going to drive up the stock anymore because people are already expecting stuff to happen. So the same news that you are expecting to hear in the future, and to yourself you think that, well, this is good news, everybody else is also expecting to hear that good news. So whenever that good news actually comes out, nothing really happens. You're also going to have cases whenever good news comes out, but a stock will actually fall in price. And that will be because people expected the stock to grow at a faster pace than it did. So even though a stock is growing, a company is growing, it's not going to be increasing its stock value because it's growing slower than people thought. So basically what I'm trying to say is a lot of the people who are on this Reddit especially, you have been following these stocks for a while, and you might have seen 6 months ago that whenever a stock received some sort of news about it, the stock went up in price a lot. But you have to adjust your expectations and understand that nowadays, whenever these stocks are pretty pricey for what you're paying for them, nowadays these stocks, in order to take off, they're going to need much better news than they did in the past. Because in the past, you pretty much had nobody growing marijuana, and whenever companies like Canopy Growth, Aurora, Alphria, whenever they entered into these markets, there was nobody to compete with them. If anything good happened, then it would be a fairly big deal. But nowadays you have a lot more companies, you have a lot more competition, and you also have to understand that with the smaller companies, nowadays you're going to be getting a lot less of them who are going to be getting like multi-100% gains. And that is because they're going to have a lot more competition. You're still going to have those companies. I'm not saying that you're not going to, but you're going to have less of them, because if you're a $30 million company and you want to get into a certain market, well, chances are that Canopy Growth also wants to get into that market because that market is profitable and Canopy Growth wants to make profit. So, if you're going to be fighting against a company like Canopy Growth or competing with it for customers, for clients, for whatever, you got to understand that Canopy Growth is going to be able to out-advertise you and pretty much out-everything you because they have significantly more resources than everybody else. We have like a few top players right now, and those top players combined, they have a ridiculous amount of resources compared to everybody else in the market. So they are going to have the bulk of the money, of the advertising, and all of that. It doesn't mean that the smaller companies can't grow, but the smaller companies need to have something special about them that the bigger companies don't have. Because if smaller companies that are currently growing don't have anything special, then if they get the same news that Canopy Growth did a few months ago, well, it's not as significant because Canopy Growth is just bigger than them and they are going to outcompete them. If you look at businesses, a lot of the times the bigger businesses will dominate the smaller businesses if the businesses have nothing unique. Like if the smaller business doesn't have anything unique about it, when you're comparing it to the bigger business, the smaller business will oftentimes not survive for very long. You can look at this, you can look at different sectors, and it tends to be true. Just saying. So yeah, so that's why we have a lot more news coming out, which makes it more difficult to decide what you want to invest in, first of all. And also, a lot of these companies are pricey, and they are pricey because these news are expected to come out. And yeah, that's it. So you got to be able to understand that, and you got to adjust your expectations, because if you're investing in a company and you're expecting it to do something in the future, you got to understand that, at least in the near future, what that company is supposed to do, it's probably already priced into the stock, which is why the stocks are so pricey. In more of a long run, yes, these stocks can still go up, and they probably will go up, but the long run expectations are generally less priced into a stock than the short run expectations. So if you're expecting a company to do something, like expand or something, in the next few months, well, chances are that expansion won't drive up the stock price a lot more. The stock price will not be driven up until we see the numbers, and until the numbers are actually very good. And at that point, the stocks will drive up fairly significantly. We're seeing a lot of companies right now where they're releasing good news, but they're not releasing numbers or anything of that sort, and the stock price is not being driven up. Something like Nutritional High, where is it? It's somewhere around here. I don't know where it is, but Nutritional High, they announced that they're selling in Colorado, but their stock didn't really go up because, well, nobody has the numbers. Nobody knows how much they're selling, and people want to know that. So hopefully this helps. Hopefully it makes sense. But this is something that you need to be able to adjust. You need to adjust your expectations and be able to, change the way that you view things as the market changes, because it is not the same market that it used to be, 6 months ago, a year ago. It has changed and it's different. And hopefully what I said makes sense.